Well, hey, friends, welcome back to the podcast. I have such a fun guest for you today. Today, I'm interviewing my friend Christy Wright. So I know Christy, like Christy's a real life friend. You know how sometimes we interview people and we've never maybe met them before in real life, or they're not someone we're in relationship with. Christy Wright is someone that I am actually like in relationship with, who I love as a human. And if you don't know who she is, man, you are going to love her as well. So she is a #1 bestselling author of Business Boutique, Take Back Your Time, and Living True. Those are all books that she's wrote. She's a certified business coach, a phenomenal speaker, and a personal development expert. So she has two different podcasts. One is called Get Your Hopes Up. That's where she encourages people to get to know God, get closer to Him, and get their hopes up again. She also has her podcast called Business Boot Camp, where she gives business owners practical steps and tough love that they need to grow their business. She has been featured on the Today Show, Fox News, Success Magazine, Entrepreneur, Women's Day, like you name it. She has been there. And Christy lives in Nashville, Tennessee with her husband, Matt, and their 3 kiddos. She is my guest today. You are going to love hearing from her. Buckle in. This is a long conversation, but man, there is so much fruit in it and so much hope in it. And I hope you are as excited to hear from her as what I was. If this podcast ministers to your soul today, share it on social media. Send it to a friend who could maybe benefit from it. And let me know in the comments what you think. Okay. All right. Here's Christy. Hello, my friend.
Hi. I'm so
How are
excited about
you?
this. Good.
This is going to be so fun. Let's like pretend we haven't been talking already this morning on
On
Marco
Marco Polo all the time. I know. It's like we just changed microphones and now we're just talking more. I love it.
Hey, how are you? What's going on? Like I don't already know because we've been chatting already this morning. Thank you for coming here today. I was you were one of my first guests. I had you on like, I don't know, 5 years ago or something on the podcast. Did
Oh
you
my
know that?
gosh. Wow.
It's been a
No, I
long
didn't.
time ago.
No.
Um, And I want to give people some context of how we know each other. So I first met you in Business Boutique when you did that for the Ramsey Corporation, and we met in the green room. And you were a little intimidating. Did you know that?
Everybody tells you that. I hate hearing that, but also I'm kind of like, I'm an Enneagram 8. That's
You are.
probably, I guess, just par for the
Yes.
course.
Well, and the Lord just keeps surrounding me by Enneagram 8. So, like, I
Really
have
good.
you, I have Lisa Bevere, I have Blake Gouchette, I have Adrian Richardson. Like, a lot of my close, business
They
buddy
are. Yep.
people are all Enneagram 8. So, it's like the Lord's trying to toughen me up. But no, it was more because you're, incredible on stage. And so I'd already seen you run out on stage in your high heels, and I'm in my wedges, and you're like a foot taller than me. And so, we look like the number 10 standing next to each other. I'm like short and curvy. And
No, oh my
so it's
gosh.
like this intimidating factor. What's really cool though is we are kind of sort of ish in the same space
Yes.
of, women audiences, encouraging females, especially in the area of business. And, but I have never felt like we have been competitors.
Never. Yeah.
Isn't
Totally.
that wild? And so
Yeah.
during the pandemic is when you were like, hey, are you on Marco Polo? And I'm like, no. But I also just wanted to have conversations with you. So you were like, you should get on Marco Polo. And I'm like, fine, I'll get on Marco Polo. And so now I use it with a bunch of people, which is really, really great. So
It's so convenient to keep up with people, but it's funny that you say that because you are one of my friends. I was actually just talking to you today. I was on a podcast before this and I was referring the women that were the hosts. I was like, you've got to have Jennifer Allwood on. I was like, y'all would love her because they also love Jesus and love business. And that's what their show is about. But I think it's interesting because you could take an insecure person and they feel defensive, even if someone's not in their industry. And you take people that are confident and you can be in the exact same industry doing the same thing. We both do business coaching.
yeah.
And we don't feel flustered by that at all. We're sharing best practices. We're good friends. I'm like, how can I help you? You're like, how can I help me? And
Yeah.
how can you help me? And so I think it just goes back to that confidence and the same values, not
Mhm.
even the industry. And it's when you put that out there, an attitude of confidence and generosity, which you do so well, you attract people like that and you repel people that are not like that, which I think is just awesome.
Yeah, but you've also been like a super safe person in the industry. Like,
Mm,
not that
mm,
there are necessarily unsafe people, but
yeah.
there are some people that they're like, how are things going? And you're gonna say, oh, good, regardless
Mhm,
of how things are going.
mhm,
You're one of the
mhm.
people that are like, how are things going? I'm like, well, let me just tell you. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
you kind of get the real, but it's only because you're a trustworthy person.
Mm,
So thank you for
thank
that
you.
and for your friendship.
Absolutely.
So all right, let's talk about what you kind of used to do, what you're kind of doing now. Let's talk about a whole bunch of things and just see kind of where the Lord kind of leads us. So tell me about your time at Ramsey. For people who maybe don't know what you used to do, will you kind of tell them what your background was?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll give you the 2-minute version, then you can
Yeah.
ask any follow-up
Sure.
questions you want
Yep.
to. So I started at Ramsey because truly I feel like God called me to. There was this crazy story where he said I was leaving the YMCA, 15 years ago. And I was like, I don't know if I'm going to find a company I believe in as much as the why. And I felt the Lord say, you're going to work for Dave Ramsey. And I was like, great. Who's Dave Ramsey? And I didn't know who he was. And it said,
Hilarious.
based in Nashville, Tennessee. I was like, great. I don't have to move. I live in Nashville. This is fantastic. And I started as a project manager. So I took care of all the youth and teen products. And through a series of events, of opportunities combined with me raising my hand and just kind of
Yeah.
being a problem solver in my mid 20s, I became a speaker for the organization. And so I was speaking and traveling. And even that was, I kind of got into it sort of accidentally, never planned to do that. That turned into a full-time thing of becoming a Ramsey personality, which turned into an author. And I had brands and podcasts and multiple business units and teams that I would lead with the team. And best-selling books. And it just became this whole machine.
Yeah.
And the vision was that Dave would have lots of other personalities on the team for a succession plan and for stability and scalability. And I was one of those people. And so I always held it, Jen, with very open hands because I never set out to do this. I never had a dream of becoming an author. I never had a plan to, work my way up the ranks of
And what is
Ramsey.
amazing is like, you're such an incredible speaker, but like, you kind of just said yes to speaking, like on a
Literally, they
total,
didn't
like
have a,
random. Yeah. It was
yeah.
like somebody asked you and you were like, well, okay.
When I was a project manager, the funny story is because people are like, how did you get into this? When I was a project manager and Rachel was supposed to speak at this conference for 20 different dates, she wasn't able to do 10 of them. And I had to go back to the conference and let them know that, she could only do 10. And the guy said, what am I going to do, Christy? I'm 25. I'm 26, Jen.
Yeah.
He's like, what am I going to do? I don't have her booked for 10. I have her booked for 20. What am I going to do for the other 10? And I said, I'll do them. And he said, can you speak? I said, I think so. I've never spoken in my life.
Yeah. Do you
And
think it's because you are a natural problem solver?
Yes, 100%. I think I'm a natural problem solver, but here's the other piece because I always want to make things tactical and teachable for audiences. I never want people to think, oh, you can do that because you're you. You can do that because you're an Enneagram 8 or you're confident or whatever. No, no, no. There are skills that anyone can develop and there are beliefs that anyone can choose to hold. And so I'm a naturally positive person, but I also choose to have the attitude of a student. And so if you look back to that instance with the speaking, for example,
Yeah.
I said yes to an opportunity before I knew how to do it. A lot of people wait for permission before they go do anything. Research even shows this. Men will apply for jobs if they have 60% of the qualifications, but women, if they have 100%. So how many opportunities are we missing out on because we're not going for it?
Yep.
And I'm just a person that goes for it, not because I'm so confident, but because I'm willing to try. I'm willing to be a student. I'm willing to fail. I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to say, hey, I don't know how to do it, but I think I'll learn while I'm doing it. So let's go do it.
Right.
And so I think that that is such a valuable set of beliefs and skills that are going to open you up to more opportunities, which opens you up to more growth and learning. Because you know how I learned how to be a speaker? On a stage, Jen, on a stage, not in a classroom, not because someone gave me a permission slip or a degree. I learned on the stage
by fire, baby.
to do it, huh?
Baptism by fire. You just learn what you're doing.
Which is business, which is life, which is everything, which is the faith walk with the Lord. It's all of it. So, so I always held it very loosely in that sense because I never planned to do it. And I was always very grateful. I tried to be excellent at it. I did discover my gifts in it, my calling in it. But I think that's also the reason why in 2021, when God called me to leave, even though I was completely shocked and blindsided by this call, and I thought I would be at Ramsey forever, God called me there. So it must be forever. I'd committed to forever on paper, everyone. So that was scary. But I never found my identity in it. I really, truly can say from a very healthy perspective, I didn't get everything right, but I never found my identity in a spotlight or a stage or the Today Show or anything like that. And so when I left, I felt just as valuable, just as confident as being me as I did when I was on big stages. And that has really carried me not only through the transition of such a major life change, but it's carried me through a season where I'm not choosing to be on the spotlights and I don't feel called to as much anymore. And so I'm still confident in myself. And I think that's really important.
Yeah. And as your friend who, talks to you when we both have on no makeup and, we're getting ready in the mornings, like I can say with 100% certainty that is absolutely the truth about you. And I love that about you, that you held it loosely and you also just know who you are, whether you work there or whether you work here or whatever. And so when you knew that it was time to leave Ramsey, like it wasn't Christy, megaphone,
Yeah.
speaking through the burning bush moment. But my guess is it was more of an inkling, more of a nudge, or did you feel like there was a specific moment? Because we're going to have women who are listening right now who are in a job that they are supposed to be leaving, or knew probably that they should have already left, or God's going to be calling them to leave. So what did that look like for you? Was it
Okay, so
a
this is one of my,
persistent nudge, or was it just like a one day you're like, oh my goodness, this
yeah,
is what I'm supposed
yeah.
to do? Yeah.
So when the Lord, this is one of my favorite things to talk about. I love talking about discerning the voice of God
Yes.
because God speaks and leads in many different ways. And
Mm-hmm.
he may speak and lead you different than he does me, but there's a lot of examples we have in scripture. And then what's interesting is I feel like in my experience, the more I walk with the Lord, the more ways he opens up to me of ways that he leads. So for example, I'd never had visions ever in my life,
Mm-hmm.
ever. I mean, other than like vision casting my year, but that's
Yes.
not like, I'm talking about a prophetic vision.
Yeah.
I'd never had that until 2 years ago when I was leaving Ramsey and I asked the Lord for vision. I said, I know you speak in visions. It's biblical. Other
Mm-hmm.
people see visions. I want a
Yep.
vision. The Lord gave me a vision. And I've had multiple visions since. So I think there's also even a growth in our maturity in our walk
Yes.
with the Lord where he can speak in multiple ways. So
Yeah.
if he speaks in multiple ways, that's awesome because he can lead you in multiple ways, but
Mm-hmm.
it's also there is a different level of discernment where you're going, is this you or is this just my crazy idea? So one of the things that I can definitely build my life on is the Holy Spirit is persistent. If you have a persistent anything,
That's
persistent
good.
call, persistent
Mhm.
idea, persistent confirmations through people,
Yeah.
persistent word from scripture, persistent situation.
Yes.
If there's a persistent theme,
Mm-hmm.
it is very, very, very likely that it's the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
Now, I know the enemy can be persistent too, but this is different. This is coming from within you. It may be something you don't want to do. Often the Lord will call
Often
you to do
it
something
is.
you
Yes.
don't want to do. It's not
Yeah.
like, hey, I've got this
Yeah.
persistent nudge to go to the beach all the time. I
Yeah.
wish I had that nudge.
Right.
Okay. This is more like, go do the hard obedient
Yes.
thing.
I
But for
sometimes
me,
will feel
it's
like I'm gonna throw up. Like, oh my
yes,
gosh, I have
anything with
I
that.
got to do this right now. Like, I'm going
Yeah.
to be sick until I just
Mhm.
get it done. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And the way that I describe that, Jen, is like that tension
Mhm.
is when our will is not in alignment with the Lord's will. And so
Mhm.
there's this gap there. And that's the tension. That's the rub
Yeah.
because we're like, no, 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 not that, not that. The
Anything but that.
moment, anything but that.
Anything but that. Yes.
Anything but that. The moment we decide to obey. Now,
Yeah.
not the moment we obey in the natural, but the moment
Yeah.
we decide in our heart and our mind to obey, where we've committed relief.
Yeah.
And
I
now
would agree with that
our
100%.
will,
Yeah.
we've pulled our will into alignment with the Holy Spirit and God's will. And the relief is the relief of the tension where we were out of alignment. And so you can almost always guarantee that what you're doing is God's will if you feel that relief. Now, it doesn't mean you're not scared because I was
Yeah.
scared out of my
I
stinking
was gonna
mind.
say, how scared were you?
It doesn't mean it's not hard,
Yeah.
but this is the right thing.
Yeah.
And so for me, the way that the Ramsey thing happened was it started with highlights, as all good stories do, getting my highlights done. I'm waiting for my
Yes.
hair appointment. Lisa Harper calls me.
Uh-huh.
We chit chat, which is out of the ordinary. She says, Christy, you're called to preach. It feels like my body lit on fire, which I'm like, that's weird. Why is this happening? That night I told my husband about it. And as I tell him, I start crying. And it feels like this idea starting to come into my conscious of like, maybe I won't be at Ramsey forever. That's the idea at this point. Maybe I won't, this is mid-November.
Yeah.
Maybe I won't be at Ramsey forever. That feels terrifying, but I'm crying. But the tears don't feel like fear. The tears at this stage are tears of affirmation. It's like, oh, there's something there.
Yeah.
The Holy Spirit is actually affirming it through tears. I go upstairs to go to bed. I'm like, this is crazy. I just got to go to bed. So I'm going to read my seminary reading for that night back when I was in seminary. And it was all on how Carl Jung had to come out from under his mentor, Sigmund Freud, to fulfill his life's work. And it's
Mm.
like paragraph after paragraph. I mean, basically saying, Christy Wright, it's time to leave
Right.
Dave Ramsey. I'm like, oh.
Right.
Like it was so
Yeah.
specific. It was
Yeah.
eerie. It was so direct. It was undeniable. And so that was 3 confirmations in a day
Mhm.
that there was something going on. But
Yeah.
I still, Jen, I was still like, this is 20 years from now. He's given me a heads up that I
Right.
won't be there for my whole life, but like,
Right.
so I push it out of my mind. Fast forward a week, he's back. He speaks, wakes me up at 3 a.m, speaks to me.
Yes.
And I'm watching Christy McCullen on a sermon at like 3 a.m. because I couldn't sleep. And he spoke to me and he said, watch her. You're going to be doing that. And then I just start crying. So I'm like, you're back. I'm so scared. This must mean it's like not 20 years from now. It's like maybe sooner. Still thinking like 5 years, you know?
Yeah.
And he said, this is going to be hard for you
Hmm.
making this leap. But if
Yeah.
you will trust me, you will make more of an impact than you ever could where you are. And so about 6 in the morning, he begins to speak to me. I'm crying. I'm
Yeah.
reeling, crying and reeling. And my husband comes downstairs. I'm like, get in here. I got to talk to you.
Yeah.
So I just unload all that on him, just like we were just saying, like I'm a verbal processor. Well, the next morning I leave to go to the beach with my mom, which was this super spontaneous random trip.
Yes, I
And I'm
remember.
alone and
Yeah.
I'm alone. And the Lord speaks to me so lovingly, but
Uh-huh.
so persistently through signs, through ideas, through dreams, through confirmation, name it. It
Right.
just everywhere around me, to the point where I very quickly got to the place where I feared disobedience more
Mm.
than I feared leaving. And I feared
Yeah.
leaving a lot.
Yeah.
And so on that Wednesday, while I was still at the beach with my mom, I
Hmm.
pulled out my phone at breakfast and I drafted an email to Dave Ramsey's
Hmm.
assistant. And I knew this would send off fire alarms. If I
Yeah.
asked to meet with Dave, this is not normal. We don't hang out all the time. And
Right.
so I knew this was going to set off a series of dominoes that
Yeah.
there's no turning back. And
Right.
I sent that email saying, hey, I'd like to have some time with Dave.
Yeah.
And walking that out, Jen, was some of the most difficult months of my life. Hands
Yeah.
down. One of the scariest things I've ever done in my whole life.
Yeah. How did you tell Dave then? And I'm acting as if I don't know the story, but we're close enough that I know the
Right, right,
story. But
right.
for our listeners, did you tell Dave on that meeting then?
So it set off alarms. It set off
Yep.
lots of alarms, to where two board members then asked to meet with me on Monday before I could meet with Dave on Wednesday, because
Yeah.
they wanted to know
Yeah.
what was coming. And so I told them on Monday, and I said, it's really important for me that I want to tell Dave myself. Dave and I actually have a really close relationship. He's always
Yes.
been so kind to me. His daughter and I are best friends. And so he's
Yes.
always treated me a little bit like a daughter. And
Yeah.
I just didn't want him to find out through the chain of command. We're
Right.
close and
Yeah.
I respect him so much. And I know
Yeah.
he respects me a lot. And so I just didn't want him to get the news through the grapevine, you know? And so I told them on Mondays, but I said, please let me tell him.
Yeah.
And so on Wednesday, we met those board members, him and
Yes.
myself, and they had already given him a heads up, which I expected. But then we had the actual
Yeah.
conversation and I cried so much. It's
Yeah.
embarrassing. But I let him know that that's what I felt like God was
Yeah.
calling me to do.
And how did he take that?
Um, one of the things I love about Dave is he is very, you got kind of the hard guy on the radio show, but he actually is a very, I don't know the right word. It's not like tender's not the right word, but there's a sensitive, like really thoughtfulness to him, and he really cares about me. And so I
Yeah.
think that came through. I could just tell. I mean, I
Yeah.
think he was really sad.
Yeah.
I kind of tear up when I even think about it, but I think he was
Yeah.
really sad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Partially
Just
because
to
of the
be, yeah.
relationship, but also, the talent, the business model, that there's a lot of things he was losing in me leaving, and a
Right.
lot of things I was losing in me
Yeah.
leaving.
Yeah.
And I just remember he said, try to talk me out of it a little bit.
Yeah.
He said to me at one point, he said, I'm not going to disagree with
Mhm.
what you're saying. God has not told me that.
Yeah.
But if you feel like that's what God's telling you, then that's what God's telling you. He said,
Right.
I do encourage you. And this was a really brave moment for me, Jen. I don't think I've ever shared this publicly. But it was a really brave moment.
Mhm.
He said, I don't disagree, but I recommend, as your leader and as your friend, he said, I recommend you talk to some trusted mentors, Christine Kane and Lisa Harper, Lisa Bevere, like talk to some of these women and run it by them, just for an extra layer of discernment before you make this decision. He said, I would just recommend you do that. And I said, and it was like, I literally took a deep breath before I said it. And I
Mhm.
said, I will do that. And I'm going to, I'm telling you that it will not change my mind.
Yeah.
It will not change this decision.
Yeah.
And he said, wow, well, it sounds like the decision is made. I
Yeah.
said, it is.
Yeah.
And that was a really hard moment
Mhm.
for me to really stand up in that scenario in a
Yeah.
boardroom with board members and the CEO of our company and a
Yeah.
dominant personality like Dave, who I
Right.
love and respect, and the
Mhm.
history of me with that organization for 12 years, to stand up for myself when I didn't even want to be doing it. I didn't even
Yeah.
want, at
Right.
this stage, it's pure obedience. Now,
Right.
my desire to leave came later, where I was actually very thankful to leave, and I was
Yeah.
so happy to be gone. Not because anything was wrong, but I was like, oh, this opens up a whole world I didn't know existed. But I was not there in that
Yeah.
room. In
Yeah.
that room, I'm walking it out with fear and trembling.
Right.
I'm walking out something I absolutely do not want to do,
Mhm.
purely in faith, while purely terrified and having to stand up for myself and really carry it out.
Yeah. And probably in the back of your mind thinking, if I heard the Lord wrong. Like this is gonna go so poorly.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
I love how, I've never met Christine Kane or Lisa Harper personally, but you know how much I love Lisa Bevere. And so I love how you're like, it's not going to matter if even these great women of faith say X. I know that I know that I know what I believe that I heard from the Lord, and that trumps everything else, the opinions of it.
Well, it does. And in full disclosure, I know those women, and I know those women would clap me right out of there. Like Christine Kane would ask me every time I see her ever since I've met her, every time I'd see her, she'd go, "You still with Ramsey?" And I'd say, "Yep." And she'd go, "Things still going well?" And I'd say, "Yep." She'd go, "Okay." And
Okay.
I always thought in the back of my mind, maybe she wanted to like recruit me for her team to like
Yeah.
do something with her. That's what
Mhm.
I was thinking while she was asking, because she always
Yes.
asked every time.
Yes.
And in hindsight, I look back and I go, "Oh no, she knew.
Yeah.
She knew I wouldn't be there forever." She had
Yeah.
the unbelievable gift of prophecy, and
Yeah.
she knew it was a matter of time. And when I called her and told her I was leaving, she literally was like, "I'm running laps around.
Yes.
I'm so
Yes.
excited." And
Yes.
again, it's nothing against Ramsey. She just
No.
knew that
Yes.
God had something else for me outside of that place,
Yeah.
and she saw it, and she was just waiting for it. So when he said to go talk to them, I thought, "Ugh, I can," but I'm telling you, they're
Right. Right.
expecting this.
Right, right. I knew that you would not be at Ramsey forever either, only because, and you know how much I love Dave Ramsey. I mean, I have his picture right here.
Sure.
I talked to that man on the phone when we were close to bankrupt one time, and every time I've been physically in his presence, I bawl like a baby because he's just such a fatherly figure. I'm
He
like,
is.
his pictures are me bawling.
Yeah.
Um, and so, but I always thought to myself, like, you were so boxed in.
Mm,
Not in a bad way
yeah.
for Ramsey, but just like there was a box that you
Yeah.
were really meant to be
Yeah.
breaking out of, in due season. And so,
Yeah.
so then you ended up leaving.
Yeah.
What were you able to leave like with? Like, was it friendships were all
Well,
still intact? And which, by the way, like from an outsider looking in, how honorable that you guys, I
mm,
mean, it just sounds like Ramsey took the high road on everything and you took the high road on
yeah.
everything. And
Yeah.
that's really beautiful to see, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. And it's hard to do. I'll say that it's hard to do because in the practical, you have very real problems with leaving like that. It's almost kind of like a divorce where it's like a
Yeah.
separation of things. There's the legal side of it, there's the
Yeah.
communication side of it. You want to honor everybody involved. It's hard. It's a
Yeah.
super hard thing. The thing that I can say that is true of Ramsey and true of me is we did everything we could to honor each other and
Mhm.
honor everybody involved every step of the way. And that heart, I think, really led the conversations, even when there was hard conversations and disagreements and how things would play out. There was always a heart to honor everybody. And so I think that made a big difference.
Christy, are you there? I'm losing you just a little bit. There you go. Now you're back. It
Oh,
was.
I don't know if you're actually losing me or if I was just like stuttering, just waiting. Um, but I mean it, and here's the other thing I'll say from a like legal side or whatever.
Yeah.
I knew exactly what I'd signed. I knew exactly
Yes.
what I'd signed up for. And I understand that they run a business and they're protecting their business. So there was
Yeah.
nothing about it that I was mistreated. I was
Yes.
taken advantage of. None of that. Zero.
Yeah.
Zero. But the reality when I signed that in my mid
Yes.
20s, and I'm like, I'm a project manager, whatever you guys want to
Yeah.
do is great
Yeah.
with me.
Exactly.
And then on the backside of my life's work, I mean, I'm going to tear up even to think about to
Yeah.
walk away
Yeah.
from my books, my
Yeah. Yeah.
podcast, my story, my brand, my YouTube channel, my
Mhm.
events, and it wasn't mine, it was the team's, and it wasn't mine, it was
Yes.
the Lord's, but it's my name, it's my face, it's my
Yeah.
heart, it's my stories, it's my content, it's my blood, sweat, and tears, it's
Mhm.
products I'd fought for like crazy. So to walk away from that,
Yeah.
it wasn't like, honest to goodness, it was not an identity thing, Jen, but it was like, man, it's like, we always say when we write books, authors say like, oh, it's like kind of like birthing a baby. Like it felt
Yeah.
like I was like leaving behind
Yes.
babies. Like it
Like
felt like
kids. Yeah.
these are mine.
Yeah.
And so that was really hard. And
Yeah.
yes, there was obviously the fear of the financial, but I truly believed, I was like, the Lord called me out, the Lord, his will, his bill. He is going to solve my bills.
His
He's going to solve
will,
my problem.
his bill. I have never
Yeah.
heard that.
I heard it from someone and I'm like, I'm going to use that all day. I don't even remember who
His
I said it.
will, his bill. I love that. That's
So I'm like,
amazing.
the practical side,
Yeah.
yes, there was fear, but that's not what kept me up at night.
Mhm.
I think so. When I was sad to leave my books, I wasn't sad to leave the money of the books.
Yeah.
That's not what it was. It was my heart. And so
Yeah.
even when I've had conversations with Ramsey, and they've been so generous, they gave me a bunch of my books that I can sell on my
Yeah.
site. So I now sell signed books on my site,
Yeah.
which is like they've been overly generous.
Yes.
But it just feels like it just felt like that was my heart. It felt like I
Mhm.
was leaving
Yeah.
part of my heart behind or something. It was
Yeah.
really hard. I
Yeah.
mean, clearly.
Yes. Yes. How are those first couple of months?
The first couple months I think were fine because I gave myself permission to not have anything figured out.
Yeah.
I did
And it
not let
was
our
right
nanny
around
know.
the holidays too, wasn't it? That was
So
that.
we announced it publicly in January. I left, yeah, December 23rd is when I signed everything. So it was literally 2 days before Christmas that I
Mhm.
like signed officially. But
Yeah.
we announced it publicly in January, but I was done at Christmas.
Yeah.
And I continued in seminary. We
Hmm.
still had our nanny. We didn't have a conversation with her about finding
Yeah.
something different until March, which someone hears that they go, oh, nanny, whatever. No, no, no. She would been with our family
For a
5 years and she's
Yeah.
a part of our family. Like she's
Yeah.
in family photos. She's Aunt
Right.
Becca. Like she still is Aunt Becca and comes over
Yeah.
every week. Like
Yeah.
this was not like, oh, an employee.
Yes. Yes.
Um, so we just kept everything kind of status quo for those first few months. And I think that gave me space
Yeah.
to process what had just happened before we made any other major
Yeah.
life decisions. And I think that was really important. And the
Mhm.
Lord had also told me to. He told me in
Yeah.
the fall, you're going to rest for 3 months and do nothing for 3 months. And so I
I
really
remember
wanted
that.
to obey that versus
Yeah.
in my fear and panic going and spinning something up and it's the wrong thing.
Yes. Yeah. Which would have been really easy to do and probably like your flesh probably really wanted to
Yes.
do that because you're
Yes.
a fixer of problems again. And
Yes.
I actually am going to be interviewing your friend Annie Downs
Yeah.
on the podcast this fall because she's so good at like taking sabbaticals. And
Yes, she
you know,
is.
and I know, and so I'm interviewing her actually about that. And then just hearing you say, you just kind of laid low for 3 months. I'm like, the other day I had this revelation since I was 14 years old. I've never had like a chunk of time where I didn't
Mm,
work. Like even
mhm.
when I had babies, because I had
Yeah.
my painting company. So it was like birth a baby and get right back to,
Right.
the
Right.
marketing of it. And so I'm so glad. I remember you taking that 3 months. And so was there at any time where you like, oh my gosh, this is hard. And you were like, did I make the right decision? Or I think you knew in your know, or you made the right decision, but that doesn't mean everything was just, rainbows and Lucky Charms either.
Well, and I think there's the in between. I don't think as believers we talk about the in between a lot because there are times that God will call you unto something else. So he
Mhm.
might say, "Hey, you're going to go move to this state, take this
Yeah.
job." And it's hard to leave, but you're going to the thing. You know what
Yeah.
you're going to. There are other times when he calls you out
Yeah.
and you don't yet know what it's unto. And so
Yes.
it's this Abraham type of call where he says, I want you to leave everything you've ever known and I'll show you where to go as we walk. And you're like,
Yeah.
but will you? Because we're
Right. Right.
walking and holy cow, I
Right.
don't have anything yet to get excited about, take a hold of, depend
Yeah.
on, anticipate. I don't have
Yeah.
any of that looking forward. All
Yes.
I know is I've left everything. So you
Yes.
feel naked. You
Hmm.
feel like exposed. You feel so
Vulnerable.
vulnerable.
Yes.
You feel so like I don't have anywhere to put roots. And honestly,
Yeah.
Jen, I feel like not trying to jump ahead here, but I've shared this openly on my podcast, Get Your Hopes Up, about this house journey God has had us on for
Yes.
a long time.
Yeah.
And he gave me a vision the other day because I have visions often now that I've asked for
Yes.
them. I have visions.
Yep. I have visions all the time. Love it.
So
So.
here's the vision the Lord gave me. It's in the house situation right now, but I can look back and go, oh, I felt like this then, this in between.
Mhm.
Where when I every year at the lake house, I get new palms because I can't keep them alive in the off season
Yeah.
apparently. And so I have to
Uh-huh.
get rid of the old palms and get new palms, and they just are beautiful and are
Is
big
that a
leaves.
plant? Because I don't know what a palm is.
It's like a Florida palm. It's just like a type of plant. Yeah. Yeah.
Really? We don't have those in Kansas
Palm
City.
palm
Okay.
leaves.
Okay.
Imagine like a palm tree, but it's like a
Okay.
plant, a potted plant.
I kill things, so but I can imagine.
Same,
Okay.
which is where
Okay.
the story goes. So I have to get new ones every year. So I go buy the palms at Lowe's, for example.
Mhm.
Okay. And I
Yeah.
bring them home and I take them out of the plastic pot that they come in to put
Yeah.
them in the bigger pot that I'm going to plant
Mhm.
them in. And as I pull them out, right, there's like a tearing away. There's a tearing away of
Yes.
the roots. There's a
Yeah.
tearing away of the comfort. There's a tearing away. And it's just like you're shaking off the dust. And it's just this tearing away that is painful.
And I
I
always
feel
think
like,
this is gonna kill it. Like this
yes,
this thing right here is gonna make it die.
yes.
Yes.
And that leaving Ramsey felt like one of
Yeah.
those, right? Like of like a uprooting.
Mhm.
But before I put it in the next pot, you know what I do? I sit it on the concrete on the sidewalk next to me while I get the pot ready. So then I put the
Yeah.
soil in the pot and I tuck it to the sides and get it ready.
Good. Mhm.
I feel like the palm on the sidewalk, Jen. I feel like
Yes.
the palm on the sidewalk. And
Yes.
that's what some of those months felt like. It felt like a palm on a sidewalk.
Yeah.
I don't have my new pot yet, but I'm
Yeah.
not in my old pot. And I
Yeah.
feel real freaking exposed. I can't put my roots down. I
Yep.
can't live here. I
Right.
can't survive here.
Mhm.
And there's that in between. And Craig Cooney is a guy I follow on Instagram. His account is called Daily Prophetic.
Ooh,
And
and
there's a
I
lot of weirdos on Instagram, but this guy is on point. Like he is
okay.
unbelievable how on point he is. And he has a
Okay.
devotional called The Threshold, and he
Okay.
talks about seasons of transition. And that has been so timely for me because there was a
Ooh,
transitioning out of Ramsey, which was those
yeah.
first 3 months. There's a transition of the last 2 years where I'm still having a narrow lane to run in because of the separation, but then also
Yep.
not quite doing the new thing. And
Mhm.
then now, even with the house stuff, I feel like God has emotionally moved me out of this house, but I don't yet have my new house.
Right.
And so there's something, and we're all always in transition at times, but you feel exposed and vulnerable,
Yes.
very confused, very disoriented. Did I make the right decision leaving that pot? Did I make the
Yeah.
right? And so I just think as believers, we've got to know that that is biblical
Mhm.
and know how to rely on the Lord's word and nothing else, because you have nothing else to rely on. The Lord said to me last year, do you trust what I say more than what you see? Do you trust what I say more than your bank account? Do you trust what I
Yeah.
say more than what's
Yep.
going on around you? Because there are times he will bring you to a place of being a plant on a sidewalk or
Yeah.
being in between like the trapeze where you've not yet taken
Right.
hold of the next bar, and all you've got's his word. I
Yeah.
mean, you are
So good.
flying through the air, scared out of your mind. And the only thing you
Yeah.
have is, Lord, you said, this
Yes.
is what you said, and
Yeah.
I'm going on what you said. And that's
Yeah.
all I've got.
Yeah.
And thankfully, we don't live like that all the time, because that
Yeah.
would be lots of anxiety. But
Yes.
there are times he'll call you to it, and we've got to
Yeah.
learn to depend on his word.
So tell people what you're doing now then. Now that that season is kind of behind you, because I feel like you're out of that in between
Oh,
season.
totally. Well,
You're in
from
the
a
you're in the big pot now.
yeah, from a work standpoint, I feel like that. But it's interesting because the pot looks so different. Even
Yeah.
like what I think of when I think of business
Mhm.
and what I want for my life. I was just talking about this today, actually. What I want for my business right now is so different than what I would have wanted 3 years ago. And it's different than what I will want in 3 years.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
I'm in a season right now where I've got 3 little kids, 9,
Mhm.
7, and
Yep.
4. All of them have ADHD. One has autism. I found out I have ADHD in January.
Yeah.
And in life and family life is hard. Honestly, it's just exhausting. And also I want to be home and present. And I got off a 12-year treadmill of running 100 miles an hour. I'm not
Yes.
interested in jumping on another treadmill at all.
Yeah.
So I'm going, okay, what are the 3 things I want to do this year?
Mhm.
And that means I'm saying no to a lot of things. But
Mhm.
these 3 things allow me to work about 20 hours a week, make good money,
Yep.
not like, oh my gosh, I'm ranking on Forbes money, but I'm making good money at
Yeah.
20 hours a week, which is
Yep.
exactly what I want right now.
Yeah.
Maybe when Mary Grace is in kindergarten, I will want to crank up the speed, run 100 miles an hour. I
Right.
am a doer. I like that. But I
Mhm.
think that there is something in this season, and I think this is a word even for your listeners. There may be times where you want to do less.
Mhm.
And that's okay. But here's what you need to know about those seasons of doing less. It didn't even have to be sabbatical, but just saying, hey, I'm going to do 3 things this year. I'm
Yeah.
going to write, I'm going to podcast, and I'm
Mhm.
going to coach. That's all
Yeah.
I'm doing. So
Yeah.
I'm saying no to a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Here's 2 things that you've got to know if you decide to do that, because there's an unbelievable freedom to just focus on a couple things and have more time
Mhm.
and
For
space.
sure.
You've got to have confidence,
Mhm.
because when you see everybody around you running 100 miles an hour,
Hustling. Yes.
you've got to have confidence to go, good for them. That's not for me.
Yep.
Oh, you're on the Today Show. Good for you. Good Morning America. Fantastic. Oh,
Yeah.
you're on these stages. Wonderful for you. Okay. You're doing these launches. You're bringing in this many $1 million. Amazing. That's not what I want right now.
Right.
You've got to have incredible confidence
Mhm.
to stay the course in this season. And then you've also just got to know that you can reassess anytime.
Yeah.
So at any point that you want to crank up the speed, or the Lord brings you an opportunity, or something changes, you can. But
Yes.
I think sometimes we feel like, oh, if I give up XYZ, I'll never get back in the game. Moms feel like this a lot. Oh, if I
Uh-huh.
get out of the
I'm
workforce, I
gonna
can't
miss
get
the
back
window.
in.
I'm gonna miss
If
the
I miss
opportunity.
the
Yeah.
window, I can't get back in my business. If I'm not out in front of everybody all the time, they'll forget about me.
Yes.
You can come back.
Yeah.
You can come back. And
Yeah.
so I just don't want, I don't want my decisions to be fear-based.
Mhm.
I've got to hustle because people will forget about me. I've got to hustle because then I
Yeah.
won't have opportunities or whatever. I just don't think that we as believers should make decisions based on fear. I
Mhm.
had a conversation um with Donald Miller, we're great friends, and this was several months ago. He's been
Yeah.
so kind to me since leaving Ramsey, of just like advice and friendship.
Uh-huh.
Several people have come around me. You were one of those people. I've got like a handful of people that I really trusted in those vulnerable early days. And he was giving me ideas about something like a few months ago. He's like, oh, Christy, you could do this and this and this. You could build this team and this team. And I go, I know. I just don't want to. I
Yeah.
just don't want to right now. I
Yep.
really like keeping things manageable
Mhm.
and having a small team and so
Yeah.
on. So it's the first 2 years post Ramsey, I was training speakers, and there's a cool God story if you want to dig
Yeah.
into it, but how the Lord gave me that idea, which is a, a lane that honors Ramsey,
Uh-huh.
but also gives me a space that I'm totally qualified and love to
Yeah.
do. And now coming out of that 2-year period where I can do anything I want to, I'm still doing that. I still love to do that. And I'm going back to my first love, which is business and
Mhm.
business coaching. And my audience is still there. They're so excited I'm back.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of merging both. It's the new thing
Yes.
of speaking and it's the old thing of business. And I think sometimes as even as business leaders, we can think like, oh my gosh, like you've got to choose, you got to choose,
Yeah.
you can only do one thing. When you get started, I think it is good to have a focus so you're known
Mhm.
for something. But once you've been at this over a decade, you've got
Yes.
permission to go in a couple spaces. I've got
Yeah.
permission to have a faith-based podcast,
Yeah.
Get Your Hopes Up, where I strictly preach and teach the word, and then a business show, Business Boot Camp, where I just give tactical business advice. I can do whatever I want to.
Yeah.
I'm known in both spaces and I don't have to
Mhm.
pick. And so I think it is very wise when you're starting out to have a focus, but after you've been doing this a long time, you can have your hands in a couple
You kind
things,
of earn the
and
right.
that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to go back real quick to the part where you talk about all three of your kiddos
Mhm.
having ADHD
Yeah.
and
We've
yourself.
had lots of conversations about
We have
that.
had multiple conversations, and I was like so just honored to get to be a part of
Mm.
those conversations with you because um, we too have our daughter has ADHD. And when we got that diagnosis a year and a half ago, first of all, it was like, oh my gosh, this explains so much. But we also had already had 3 children and never had experience with that. So talk about a total learning curve for Jason and I, just
Yeah.
about um, the way our little one is wired and the needs that she has that are different than our other kids and how they couldn't be raised in the same way and discipline has to look different. And then, all of the testing that went along with that, both for ADHD and just being, on the spectrum as well. And so that was a whole time and an adjustment period for our family where, yes, it explained a whole lot, but that didn't take the chaoticness out of just the
Mhm.
day to day. And
Right.
so for you, I remember, when you started all the testing, and I think that I only realized it was 2 of your kids. I did not realize all 3. And then for
Well,
your,
Mary Grace has not been diagnosed. I'm just
okay,
self-diagnosing her right
okay,
now because I'm
okay,
telling you,
gotcha.
she's all over the
Okay.
place.
Okay. And so, and then I know you got a diagnosis, which then made me go, okay, do I need to be getting tested? Because, you know how you just sometimes know yourself enough to know, like, I fit this and this and this. And but for
Hmm.
me, it probably is not going to change anything because I don't think it's severe enough that I would need to, medicate or something else. Now, my daughter is a different story. And
Hmm.
so, but tell us, like how that has, just kind of a changed like what you're doing. I know you've done some content on ADHD
Yeah.
and I've loved watching that because I'm like, oh my gosh, I can relate to this so much. But yeah, tell me how that's because I'm guessing that some of that is also why you want to do keep your work schedule to a really
Yes.
manageable 20 hours a week because um, the truth is sometimes it's exhausting. I mean, I'm just being
Right.
honest. I have only one. But just, the practical needs of that require attention. So
Right.
talk to us about
Right.
that.
Well, it's so funny that you bring this up because I actually want to tell some of our story, me and you, our story, because you're such a key player in my story with this. And I'm sure you'll remember once I start talking. But
I do, but I wasn't going to say it. That's your story to tell. Yeah.
well, I mean, it's so cool how it all unfolded
Mhm.
between you and I because God used you to help me learn so much about my family that literally changed our life. So, um, God called me out of Ramsey. 3 months later, we have to get an evaluation for my son Conley because he's going to have to go to this special school. He didn't get into his brother's school, and the special school requires a evaluation. I was very anti-evaluation at this point. I was
Yep.
like, don't label him. I don't want to label. I don't want a stigma. I don't want him to grow
Yeah.
into it or whatever.
Mhm.
Really believed I was doing the right thing by
Yeah.
protecting him
Yeah.
because you could make arguments either way. So we decided to get the evaluation. I'm going to jump ahead so I don't get all like teary and go in the
Sure.
weeds here, but he was diagnosed with autism.
Yeah.
And I had been praying against autism. I
Mhm.
wanted it to be ADHD so bad because
Yeah.
ADHD in my mind, right or wrong, but
Mhm.
ADHD does not have the stigma of autism. It
Yeah.
doesn't have the
I agree.
trajectory of autism if you were just going by Google, which I've since learned is super wrong. That trajectory is dated and not even remotely accurate to real life, but it needs to catch up. Okay. So
Yes.
we're way behind on autism, our understanding of it. And there's a stigma with it that does not come with ADHD. ADHD can be helped with medicine.
Yes.
So I was just going, please let it be ADHD. Like I'm like rooting for ADHD so hard because it just feels so much less scary to me.
Yeah.
So we get the diagnosis and it's autism and I'm wrecked. I mean, I'm wrecked. I cry. I've read lots about how hard of a diagnosis that is to get.
Mhm.
I wouldn't even say the word for 6 months, Jen. Wouldn't even say the word.
Yeah.
We didn't tell our parents for 6
And
months.
I remember when you were not going to tell anyone.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I can look back on that year and see from a variety of factors. I've left all of my structure. I've left my,
Yeah.
I don't have a nanny anymore. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I was fully
Yeah.
depressed that year. And I can look back and go, I drank too much wine at night. I cried all the time.
Mhm.
And I never considered that I was depressed because I'm a really positive person.
Yeah.
And I thought of depression as more of a chronic thing that you have
Yes.
with you for your whole life. I didn't know it could be more situational.
Yeah.
And I couldn't look back and go, I was fully depressed. Okay. Well, fast forward, you and I are chatting about, because Ari is going through, what month did she go through the evaluation process
We had her
of that
evaluated
year?
the evaluation started in August and we started medicating her in October.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it was a couple months of the diagnosis of the
Yes.
process and,
Right.
going back and
Right.
meeting with the, not the therapist, but the doctor. And then it was like also during COVID. And so crazy things were happening where we couldn't, you couldn't get an appointment for, so it was just a really rough time in general.
Okay.
Yeah.
So August. So Colleen was diagnosed with autism in March. You and
Yeah.
I are friends. We're chatting on Marco Polo.
Yeah.
You start talking to me about Ari possibly going through the diagnosis process. And
Mhm.
we're talking about like, what are some of the symptoms? What are some of the
Mhm.
behaviors that are,
Yep.
you're not really sure about? Teachers are saying this, that, the other. You go through it and she's diagnosed with ADHD,
Mhm.
not autism.
Yep.
And as she's diagnosed with ADHD, so many of the things that you said were traits of Ari were also traits of Conley.
Yeah.
So I'm perplexed here. I'm going, how can they have so many things in common? And Ari has ADHD and Conley has autism. Now
Yeah.
they're not exact, so I could attribute some of that, but Conley still has, even after the
Right.
diagnosis,
Yeah.
so many things that were so similar. So then fast forward, Ari gets on medicine, and you
Mhm.
tell me you're like, it's changing our life.
Game
Christy,
changer.
like overnight,
It makes
and
me want to cry when I think about it.
you start telling me things about her.
Yep.
Christy, I asked her to, pick up her shoes and she picked them up.
Which sounds so crazy, but to people who haven't experienced this, oh my gosh. I mean, it would be just like World War III and
That's right.
just the
Everything.
defiance
Every
and
decision,
yes. Oh my gosh. And it's
every
all
decision, everything.
everything's blown up and it's big
Yes.
and it's just you're like, I don't
Yes.
even know what's happening here. I just
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Oh.
And you also said something that I'll never forget it. And I've said it. I've told so many people this. You said, Christy, she's affectionate.
Hmm?
Like she
She
gave me a
touched my
hug. She was
hand when
never
Mhm.
affectionate before. And
Yep.
as you're describing all these things, I'm going, all the things that were problems, not affectionate, not listening, doesn't all over the place, doesn't listen to anything you
Yeah.
say. I'm like, that's Conley. So
Yeah.
because of the similarities between Conley and Ari, I go back to the pediatrician. I start doing some digging. I'm like, can he have both? Could he have
Yeah.
ADHD and autism? And this explains some of the ADHD, some of these behaviors that they have in common. So I go back to the pediatrician and he said, well, these things you're describing, autism doesn't account for that. ADHD would, and they do coexist very, very frequently.
Yes.
So we give him an evaluation. He gets diagnosed with ADHD, which, as right or wrong, I'm thrilled. I'm
Yeah.
thrilled that I have an
And like
explanation for these
almost like
things
an answer. Yes.
that can be helped by medicine.
Yes.
We get him on medicine, and I'm for sure going to cry when I say this. We get him on medicine. Literally, our life changes. And he's still the same kid. He's more of himself.
Yeah.
He is present of mind. You ask him to pick up his shoes, he picks up his shoes.
Yeah.
But the day that I'll never, excuse me, the
Mhm.
day that I'll never forget is when he came up next to me. I was sitting on the couch. He came up next to me, sat right next to me, and put his arm around my shoulder. I sent you a picture of it. And I said,
Yeah.
he's never put his arm around me. He's never touched me. Like, he's never like, oh, I was
Yep.
wrecked.
Right.
So this medicine, getting him on ADHD meds, which absolutely is right for us, not right for everybody, right for us,
Right. Right for us as well. Mhm.
solved 50% of our problems. Do you know how
Yep.
life-changing it is to have 50% of your problems solved? They're not all solved, but it's 50% less
Yeah.
difficult every single day. Well, fast forward, then in November, Carter's
We're both
teachers have been talking
crying.
to me. I know Carter's teachers have been talking to me about his handwriting for a year. They're like, could you look at OT? I'm like, I can't even think about OT. I've been in the weeds over here with
Right.
Conley and OT and
Yeah.
ST and feeding therapy and everything. So I'm finally like getting my head above water, and we get him in with an evaluation. He's diagnosed with ADHD, phobias,
Yeah.
dysgraphia, which is a handwriting issue. And then I start looking around. I'm like, okay, Conley has ADHD. Carter has ADHD. My mom for sure is like a poster child for ADHD. I'm the missing link here. I'm pretty sure I have ADHD. So I go get evaluated in January just to already know what I already knew.
Right.
And I
Yep.
have ADHD. So poor Matt Wright, he's living in a circus, Jen. He's just living in a circus. He's got 4 people bouncing off the wall
Oh
and a
my God.
dog. Crazy
Oh,
world.
bless his heart. There's a special place in heaven for Matt.
That's
Yeah.
right.
It was such an emotional time for both of us
It
because
was.
also, when you tell people about, the fact that you're medicating your child, there's a lot of judgment sometimes that comes with that. And I'm like, you know what, you do not live in our household and you have not seen the difference, which is night and day in this child. If she's like every once in a while, there will be, I mean, she still has meltdowns, okay? So, but
Yeah.
but one of my other kids will look at me and be like, did she have her medications? And we'll be like, oh my gosh, we forgot. Like it's so obvious
Yes.
when,
That's right.
and this isn't forever, but in this stage,
That's right.
this is what is able to help her be
Right.
reasonable, focus at school, to
Right.
be reasonable at home, to be semi-affectionate. And I remember when your son put his arm around you, because I remember when Ari like put her hand on my hand one day and I was like,
Yes.
oh my gosh,
Yeah.
and I remember one time when she just out of the blue told me she loved me. And I was like, holy
Mhm.
smokes. I mean, this is big stuff. And as somebody who's already raised, 3 children, and Ari is our adopted daughter who's much younger, and I'm old, I'm 52. I'm already tired. I'm already exhausted.
Right.
And just the how it has shifted things for us, I'm just ridiculously grateful
Well,
because
and I just want to debunk the belief or the stereotype that when you take medicine, that it turns your kids into zombies or something.
yep.
It absolutely does not. The best way I could describe it is if you imagine a child, an ADHD child, where their brain is literally in fragments floating
Yes.
above their head. That's
Yes.
that's their brain. Picture their brain floating in fragments, and they're just like this all the time.
All the
And
time.
all medicine does is put their brain back together and put it into their body where they're like there. They're
Mhm.
like present with you. It's
Yeah.
literally like it brings his brain back into his body. And so it's fascinating. It's not that he's not himself, it's that he's his most himself. I've seen him come out in theater and he's got unbelievable ideas and leadership and talent. Jet, he is like a leader in his
Yeah.
school. He is excelling in every single class and every single social thing. They're kicking us out of
Yeah.
ABA because he's doing so good. They're like, wait, he doesn't need to
Yeah.
be here. Like he's literally like the star student everywhere he goes.
Amazing.
That's not a zombie. Okay. That's a kid that like finally you've taken all the pieces of the craziness and
Mhm.
put it into a place that he can actually use his brain, settle down and feel at home in his body, feel at home in his skin. And that's an incredible gift. And
Yeah.
so, and medicine is one of those things. So I asked for a prescription for medicine and I
Mhm.
started it just yesterday. It's the kind that takes several weeks to
Okay.
work. So I can't
Yep.
like report
Yeah.
today live.
Yeah.
I feel,
Yeah.
it's not like that. So I don't know for a while, but I want to try it because I agree
Yeah.
with you. I don't think I have to have it, but I want to try it just to see how different I feel. If I
Yeah.
feel different, all I know is walking around with my brain in fragments. And I've learned
Yeah.
how to operate as an adult like this.
Mhm.
Um, but I will tell you, nothing made me more aware of my struggle with ADHD type of
Mhm.
characteristics as leading Ramsey because
Yeah.
my whole infrastructure was
Yes.
taken away from me. All of my
Right.
schedule, my teams, my assistants,
Yes.
all that was taken away. And I felt like I was floating in outer space,
Yeah.
Jen. I felt like I was floating in outer space. I was
Yeah.
like, someone give me a handlebar to hold on to because this
Yeah.
is crazy.
Well, you were used to somebody kind of having your day for you and telling you where to be and when,
Minute by
and
minute
where to
for
show up
years
and
in
for what.
advance.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I still have that every day. Like literally on this screen over here is my to-do list for the day. My team literally tells me this is what you have to do today. Because otherwise I'm going to be like to do,
Oh, totally.
and I know you have something for other people here that are listening, but I want to go back to just one more thing about the medication and with Ari, because taking the medication has it's helped her to be able to behave in ways that are normal. She feels different, and more
Mm-hmm.
confident, and like she's
Mm-hmm.
not different from the other kids. Does
Right.
that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's been like not only a win just because she's able to think more clearly and behave differently, but because she also is because she can think differently, then she does behave differently, and
Right.
then she's more like the kids that are considered, normal that are in her
Yeah.
space. And so,
Conley's the most regulated person in our house right now.
yeah.
I mean, seriously, like it's wild how Mary Grace can be screaming, which
Mhm.
she does all
Mhm.
the time for
Yeah.
unknown reasons. She's four
Yeah.
years old, and he will literally, and I will be like, like I'll be like, I'm about
Yeah.
to lose it because it's so
Yeah.
like overwhelming. And Conley will just sit there. I mean, as cool as a cucumber. Like his ability to regulate himself.
Yes. That's
And these are
amazing.
skills he's learned from ABA, but
Yeah.
also from the medicine helping him
Yeah.
not flip out, like you're
Yeah.
saying, because typically some type of a trigger or something that would instigate would just cause like explosions.
Yes. Yeah, we call that being off the rails.
Yeah,
I don't know what other people call it, but that's what we call it with Ari, being
Yeah.
off the rails. And so, yeah, we're super grateful. So I know that you have done a ton for yourself in terms of how to, give yourself tips and tricks and tools. And we're going to have a lot of our listeners because they're female. They're entrepreneur. A lot of them are creatives. A lot of them either have ADHD or lean heavily towards that. And so give us some of the things that have done. I know you have something that you can give our listeners even.
Oh yeah.
And so if you want to talk about that just a little bit, I'd love that.
Well, it's so funny, Jim, because now that I've gone down this rabbit hole of ADHD, like I really think half the population has ADHD. I don't even think it's like a disorder. I think it's just a different way to be. God just made us different. And I think most people are just not diagnosed.
Yes.
So all of our creatives, we all kind of think the same way. And there's a beautiful gifting and genius
There
to it.
is. There is a genius in it.
If we didn't have people with ADHD, we wouldn't have entrepreneurs, we wouldn't have business leaders, we wouldn't
100%.
have artists, musicians, creatives.
Yeah.
Anyway, I got a whole thing on that. I'm like, they need to change the name because it's not a deficit and it's not a disorder. It's an unbelievable gifting.
I love that.
But now that I understand, so getting the diagnosis for me was really powerful because I have so much more positive self-talk versus being like beating myself up. You're failing, you need to do better. I understand. Okay. Now that I understand my brain works this way, then what can I give myself to be successful? So this is simple, Jen. I mean, very tactical. When do I feel my best? I feel my best when I have had a shower, when I put on makeup and put on real jeans, when I like get myself ready for the day. Do I have to? No, I don't have to. I'm not going anywhere.
Right. Yeah.
I feel my best. When I feel my best, I perform. I feel more confident. I'm not worried about running into somebody at the grocery store. So I literally get very tactical and like what makes me feel good? What makes me feel energetic or productive or in control? Because so many things feel out of control. What makes me feel in control? Okay. How I look, how I run my business during the day, how I start my day. This is something I shared just yesterday on Instagram. When I wrote my book, Take Back Your Time, it came out in 2021, hit #1 national best-selling book. And then 2 months later, God called me to leave. So that was fun. Right in the middle of book launch.
That was fun. That was fun.
That was special. That was special. But when I wrote that book, I wrote into it my morning routine and I wrote into it a planner and I kept making references to it because I planned to launch this planner like 6 months later. Anyway, obviously that never happened, but I brought it back. And so it's going to come out in August, the physical planner, but I've got a digital sample. If anybody wants it, you can go to startyourdayplanner.com and download it. All it is my morning routine, but everything I put in it is an intentional step to help you start your day feeling more calm, more confident, and more in control. So I'll give you a great example, okay, of how intentional this is. The first thing I do when I start my day is I check in with myself. So what that means is I'm going to journal about how I'm feeling and how I'm doing for just a few lines. This is not like 6 pages of journaling. It's a paragraph. So if I wake up on a day when it's like, oh my gosh, I got my workout in, I'm feeling great, I'm really excited about my podcast with Jennifer today, I would write down all the things that like how I'm feeling. You might have a totally different experience. I didn't get any sleep last night. So-and-so peed the bed. I had no sleep. I'm exhausted or I'm sick. I think I'm coming down with a cold. I'm really dreading, my to-do list today. You write that down. This simple practice, which we never do.
Never. No.
Context to our day. What a concept versus waking up, pouring the coffee and just putting pressure on yourself to run as hard as you can all day. What if you took into consideration yourself, the person that's going to do all this and say, how am I doing? How am I feeling? What's the context as I enter this day? Maybe it's exactly what you hoped it would be on Thursday when you planned on Sunday. Maybe your whole week has gone off the rails. And you need to make some adjustments to your day. The premise of my book, Take Back Your Time, is life balance isn't doing everything for an equal amount of time. It's about doing the right things at the right time. But when you do the right things at the right time, you feel that sense of balance because you don't feel pressure to do everything. You're doing the right things at the right time. So if you're going to do that, then you need to get in the habit of constantly reassessing what's right now. What's right this week? What's right today? If I got no sleep last night, then my day may look different. And so I check in with myself. The next step in this morning routine, and I won't go through the whole thing, but just to give you an idea of how intentional it is. The next step is I write down things that I'm proud of from yesterday. Again, this is something we never do. All we do is focus on what we've yet to do.
To do.
All we do is focus on, I haven't done this. I haven't done this. I haven't done this. I got to do more. I got to go through the to-do list. I've got appointments. We never stop to go, hey, I'm so proud of this. This exercise, when I write down like, oh, yesterday I knocked out 3 emails. I wrote 4 podcasts. I had a great meeting with so-and-so. I took my kids for a walk, whatever, write it down. What is so powerful about this is it brings front and center to what you did and what you're proud of, which allows you to celebrate it.
Mhm.
It helps you realize you're doing better than you think you
Yeah,
are.
you're more productive than you think you are.
Total.
Yes.
But here's what's also cool. Research shows, psychology research shows that the most motivating thing in the world is seeing progress. More
Mhm.
than awards, money,
Yeah,
time
that's
off,
good.
vacations. It's simply seeing the scale go
Yes.
down makes you
Yes.
want to go work out more.
Yeah.
And we know this,
Mhm.
but we never celebrate our progress.
Yeah.
We never celebrate our
Yeah.
progress in business or life and go, hey, good job for that. So I write down what I'm proud of yesterday
Love it.
before I pile on the pressure of today.
Yeah.
Then I go through gratitude and the priorities and how I'm taking care of myself, all these things, but everything's so intentional. And this simple system, especially in leaving Ramsey, gives me some guardrails and some anchors of like bringing, again, my mind back to
Mhm.
today, being present
Yep.
in today. Here's how I feel today.
Yeah.
Here's what's right for today. Here's what I want to focus on. And you capture those ideas. And so that morning routine, it takes 5 minutes to do. I mean,
Yeah.
I make it longer because I'll do devotionals and all that kind of
Mhm.
stuff. But
Sure.
a 5 minute moment at the beginning of your day can change how you feel about your whole day. And if you change how you feel about your days, you change how you feel about your life. And
Absolutely.
so anyway, I'm excited that it's Start Your Day Planner is what it's called, startyourdayplanner.com. But you can get on the system now with a
And they
digital
can go there
version.
with the digital version. Perfect. We'll
Yeah,
put
but it
that
just
in the
gives you
show.
some structure, which for your creatives, it's so
Yes.
funny. We hate structure, but we
Yes.
need structure.
Yeah.
So it's this
It's
love-hate
this
relationship.
constant, yeah, battle internally of,
Yeah.
and so I have figured out in recent years that if I force myself to structure for just this gap of time, then I can let myself go off the rails. And,
Yes.
and so if I do that several times a day, it makes my day so much more enjoyable than if I'm like, I've got to focus for 6 straight hours, because
Right.
then I just want to stab myself in the foot with a like dull fork or something,
Right.
by the end of that 6 hours. So if I
Right.
allow myself to focus, go crazy, go crazy with
Yeah.
like with my brain is what I'm saying.
Right.
That's so much more enjoyable to me. So,
Yeah.
okay, this has been amazing. Thank you. I have decided I'm going to start going back to doing rapid fire questions at the end of my
Oh,
interviews, which I used to do years ago.
I
I
love
haven't
it.
warned you about this.
No, I love it.
You have
Bring it.
5 more minutes? Not even? Okay.
Ready.
All right.
I'm here for you.
Tell me something you could spend hours doing.
Hiking. I love
Mm,
hiking, being in
yeah,
nature and moving my body or being in the lake. Yeah.
yeah,
Anything outside, outdoors, hiking. Yeah.
perfect. What's the weirdest thing you own?
Oh, oh,
I know. I've heard a bunch of questions recently. I'm like, yes, I'm asking that.
okay. It is a black light flashlight to identify pee.
To identify pee. We
Pee.
have a black light flashlight to look for scorpions in Arizona. You
Oh,
have one to look for urine.
yeah.
Who knew?
Because Cooper peed the other day, or this was a while back. Cooper peed, and I found it, and I was
Cooper
so
being the dog.
Cooper's the dog, but it could
Yes.
be the kids, really. I mean, they just the boys are so disgusting. Who knows what is happening? And I
Yes.
was so appalled and disgusted. Then I just became this paranoid maniac. There's pee all over the house. So I got a black light flashlight so I
Oh
can
my
find it
gosh.
anytime any dog or human pees in the house. So I can go get my carpet shampooer
Hilarious.
and clean it and sanitize it and stuff. Because with two boys or kids and a
Yes.
dog, and literally Mary Grace told Becca when they were hanging out, Aunt Becca,
Yeah.
that mommy had a black light flashlight to find pee. And Becca texted me, is it true?
Is
You
it
have a
true?
black light flashlight to identify pee? I go, sure is. Sure is.
Well,
And
you
it's the
do have
weirdest thing I own, and I'm
ADHD,
not even sad about it.
which means when you dial in, you are all in. So I love it. You're like, I'm
I'm like,
going all in. I'm
we're
finding
getting
you.
rid of this. We're getting rid of it.
Yes. What was your last big splurge?
A curling iron that I do not regret it at all. It
Was it
was
the Dyson?
no
Okay.
isn't that a vacuum?
Well, they have the Dyson hair. It's like a hair blow dryer that also curls your hair at the same time.
I do not know that. This
Okay.
is a $200 curling iron. It's like GHD. It's like a pro level curling iron. I'm not
Okay.
kidding you, Jen. You don't have this problem because you have beautiful curly hair. I get this thing even close to my hair, just starts curling. It's amazing. Whereas the other one with the hot tools, I'd have to sit there holding it forever. So
That's hilarious. Last one. What's one thing you are surprisingly good at?
doing hair, actually. Not like this, but like updos. I can do updos. You need a
Really?
prom? You need a prom? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wedding? Yep. You just show me any picture, I can do it.
I love that. I love that. I love you. Thank you
So
so
random.
much for
I
being
love
like
you.
a real life friend and just for being here and giving us a lot of your time. This was gold. There's going to be a lot
Oh,
of women who are set free just by listening to this. A lot of women who are set free from jobs they're not supposed to be any longer. A lot of women who are set free because they learned something about themselves or their kiddos today that they might, further investigate. So thank
well,
you. Bless you. Would
you know
you,
what? I
yeah,
would
go for
pray.
it.
I
I
would
was just
hope
gonna,
that your listeners could find a friend like you and I have, because I'm so grateful for you. You have walked through one of the hardest seasons of my entire life with me, parallel between helping me in my business and helping me with my kids. And it's like, I'm like a ride or die. I'm like, if you are with me when I'm vulnerable, I'm with you I'd do anything for you. And Jen, I would do anything for you. I'm so thankful for your friendship.
Bless
And
you.
I hope your listeners find friends like that they
Yeah.
can be with in the hard and the good.
Awesome. Would you have the capacity to just do a 2-minute prayer over our listeners today?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
Perfect.
Father God, I just thank you for Jen. I thank you for how she loves you and pursues you and shows people to you. God, I thank you for her boldness. I was just talking about her behind her back today, talking about how bold she is for you, how she unapologetically wins in business and unapologetically chases after you. And God, what a light that is in the business world, in the faith world, and just in the world that we need, God. We need more people like Jen. God, I pray for blessing and favor over her business. I pray for discernment and direction and for the right connections and the right people that would just bless her and the work of her hands, God. I pray that you would multiply it like you multiplied the fish and the loaves, God. And I pray for every listener right now. God, the people that are listening to this episode are not here by accident. You listening right now are not here by accident. And God, I just pray that you would speak to each individual person, every single person listening right now, that you would speak to them today in a way that is personal to them, in a way that they get chills and they go, oh, that must be God. Because Jen wouldn't know that. And Christy wouldn't know that you would speak to them today for the person listening going, God doesn't speak to me like that, or God doesn't speak anymore. God, would you speak to them today? Would you bust out of whatever box they've put you in? Would you speak to them? Would you move in their hearts, in their lives in a powerful way that makes them excited to know you, excited to lean in and listen and pursue you more, God? I pray that every single listener would invite you into everything they're doing. There are some women listening right now that are running businesses and they think their business is separate from you. And they think that business is on their shoulders and it's on them to figure out the clever marketing and branding and strategy and taglines and websites and launch plans. God, you're the ultimate creator. You have endless ideas. God, would they invite you even into the practical needs of their business, from bills paid to URLs they need to purchase? God, I just pray they would invite you in. And when they do, Lord, would you show up and just blow their minds? Would you show them that you are a God that hears their prayers, answers their prayers, and you have truly more than they could ever ask or imagine, God? I pray that this episode is one that just bears fruit for a long time to come, Lord. I pray that it is one that just spurs on new conversations and connections and new provision. And most of all, people chasing after you in a new way. Again, Lord, I thank you for every listener and for Jen. I pray for protection and provision and blessing and favor over all of their lives and all of their families and all of their businesses. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, friend. Bless you.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me.